link. So I'm not sure. This happened once before. I'm not exactly sure how that happened or why, but that's what they are. They just called to tell me that. So if Mr. Rivera could look into that and see what's going on before we proceed.
I have Aquila in the old meeting right now, taking care of it.
Thank you very much. So, Council President.
Mr. Bridges is on.
He just joined.
Can you just email them this?
Yeah, everybody received the same link. For some reason, Microsoft split it, but I will email the link out again.
All righty, thank you.
Hello, it's Councilman Blakely.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening.
We're waiting for a couple other members.
I mean, it's not funny, but like.
Yeah, and like, I still walk. Like,
Excuse me, can you mute yourselves?
Somebody is like crunching or eating. Did you mute
I got
yourself?
him. I got him muted. We're still working. We're getting away with the only. I think we're only missing one council person. She just called in, and I just re-emailed out the information to her again. It's the same information. I don't know why Microsoft split it, but I'm sure Mr. Rivera and the IT team will figure that out.
Councilman Blake, you were kind in your description. They were getting down.
Yeah.
All down.
Mr. Conlon, can you hear me? Edward Pelosi?
I can.
Okay.
Yes,
I
Mr.
can,
Pelosi.
but I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Right, he's not on screen right now.
Oh,
just
okay,
as a posting.
All right. Thank you.
Ms. Kaloji, you're on screen too. Ms. Kaloji.
Are you in, Councilwoman Vaughn? Yes, but unfortunately, there's been a transposition error on the meeting agenda and docket that went out to the public. The ID number says 685. It's 685, but it's on the agenda at 658. So many people who's trying to dial in, they can't get in. Mr. On the agenda, it says 658 at the end, and it's actually 685. I don't know if that's a transposition error. It doesn't add up to 9, but the numbers were reversed.
Yeah, the link does work, but she is right. There is a transposition error on it. I did also email out the direct link, though, itself, and that is there incorrect. I don't know how the transposition error, because it was cut and pasted, so, but that is correct. So it is 685, not 658. I'm going to send out a blast email to let everybody know that right now. I did send out the meeting link update.
Yep.
And I actually have already emailed the updated link out, so we should be good to go, Council President.
All righty. So, Mr. Conlon, at this time, will you do a roll call? I've already read the statement.
Okay, Council President has already read the statement to the record. I'll now call the roll. Mr. Blakely.
Present.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson.
Present.
Mr. Harrison.
Present.
Mr. Michelle.
Present.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Present.
Ms. Vaughn.
Present.
Council President McBride.
I'm present.
Clerk is here. Mr. Kaloji.
Present.
Mr. Cruz. Mr. Cherry.
Present. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mr. Clerk. Thank you.
Mr. Liston.
Present.
Mr. Bridges.
Present.
Mr. Wilson.
Present.
Mr. Douglas.
Present.
Mr. Daniels.
Sir, did you say Daniels?
Yes, sir.
Present.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Lopez. Director Onatieri. Ms. Richardson.
Present. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, ma'am. Mr. Lavenberg.
Present.
Mr. Zelinski.
Present.
Council President, we have a quorum. Would you like me to do the invocation and flag salute?
Yes, please.
We could all bow our heads for 1 second. Almighty Father, we pray for your guidance and wisdom for the City Council and the deliberations that they make this evening. We also ask for your special coverage to help those people who are being affected by the flooding all over our region and the soldiers recently lost in Afghanistan. We ask this in your name, amen. If we could all rise to the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council President, we do have a quorum. The first item on the docket tonight is an emergency meeting resolution. This is to authorize the City Council of the City of Trenton to hold an emergency meeting without adequate notice. Ma'am, would you like me to read this into the record?
Please do.
This is Resolution 21-423, authorizing the City Council of the City of Trenton to hold an emergency meeting without adequate notice. Whereas this emergency meeting has been called for the purpose and will be limited to the introduction of the 2021 City of Trenton Transitional Year Budget. And whereas the normal requirements of the law regarding 48 hours notice have not been met due to lack of time and subject matter, though notices of this emergency meeting were emailed in a public email blast posted on the City of Trenton website, Trenton City Facebook domain, and sent by the email to the Trenton Times and posted at ecode360.com. Whereas the matters to be discussed are matters of urgency and importance in nature and substantial harm to the public interest likely to result from further delay in introduction of the Trenton City 2021 Transitional Year Budget. And whereas the need for such adequate notice could not have reasonably have been foreseen at a time when adequate notice could have been provided due to a technical issue with Microsoft Teams wherein the active meeting link failed to allow participants from the public by telephone and a new meeting link had to be created to allow public access. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the governing body of the City of Trenton by three-fourths of the members present that an emergency meeting is approved and will be limited in discussion to the introduction of the 2021 City of Trenton Transitional Year Budget. Do I have a motion to introduce Resolution 21-423?
So moved.
So moved.
I have a motion by Ms. Caldwell-Wilson. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Blakely. I'll now call the roll. Mr. Blakely, your vote.
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Harrison.
Yes.
Mr. Michelle.
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn.
Yes.
Council President McBride.
Yes.
Council President, we have three-quarters of the members present who have approved an emergency meeting. The emergency meeting is approved. Would you like me to proceed, ma'am?
Yes, please do.
First resolution on the floor is Resolution 21-422. This is the only resolution being heard tonight. This is a resolution to approve the introduction of the transition year 2021 budget. Be resolved by the City Council of the City of Trenton, County of Mercer, that the budget set forth is hereby approved by a majority of the full authorized membership of this governing body for the introduction of the 2021 transitional year budget. Before the floor is open for debate, do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion by Ms. Caldwell-Wilson. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Harrison. Council President, would you like to open the floor?
Yes, please.
Ladies and gentlemen of the body, the floor is open. Please solicit the Council President to speak. Do any members wish to be heard for the introduction of the budget? Council President, would you like me to proceed?
Yes, please do.
Okay, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm just highlighting on the screen where you can look at the 2021 transitional year budget at E-Code 360. It has been posted. I have a motion to introduce the 2021 fiscal year budget. This will be for a public hearing on the budget for September 30th at the regular meeting of the September 30th. I consulted with Mr. Cologi a little while ago, and the 30th is within 28 days, so we can actually have this at the regular meeting. We will not require a special meeting. I have a motion by Ms. Caldwell-Wilson, a second by Mr. Harrison. I will now call the roll. Mr. Blakely.
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Harrison.
Yes.
Mr. Michelle.
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn.
What are we voting on to introduce it?
Yes, ma'am, to introduce and set the public hearing for September 30th.
Not to accept it, but to introduce it.
Well, this would be the accepting the introduction, but it requires a second approval at a public hearing, which would be on September 30th.
So what are we introducing to the public?
The 2021
What's on the screen?
transitional, yes, the 2021 transitional year budget, which is this document. If I can get there, hold on one
But that
second.
that's missing some information, correct?
Well, it can be
Is it
amended, but
complete?
this is the budget that the administration has put forward, that was submitted to the body with the budget books and in this format.
Yeah, but there were a lot of stuff missing. I'm going to vote no. No.
Councilmember votes no. Council President McBride.
Yeah, so, excuse me, so Mr. Cruz.
Good evening, Madam President.
So, the clerk's budget is not in here, so that will come when?
Madam President, there is an initial budget for all of the departments that will come before adoption of the council before the October 2nd, before the October meeting, where council will be voting to adopt the budget, and there will be budget amendments that will be introduced prior to that.
All right. Yes.
Council President.
Council President?
Yes.
Council President?
Yes.
I don't understand that, but this is not an amendment that we're asking for regarding the clerk's budget or any revenues that have come into the city. We're asking, this is a baseline. So where's the clerk budget baseline? That's what we need. And why isn't that there?
Well, it's within the budget.
The introduction should have a baseline budget for every department in the city, inclusive of the clerk. then we can go to amendments. How can we amend something and there's no baseline budget for the clerk's department or any department in the city?
There actually is
So where's the
baseline.
baseline budget?
There is baseline
What?
budget that was distributed and it went out by the budget books last week, ma'am. That's
it's
actually
in
what's in
there?
the budget book. Yes, ma'am. That's what's in the budget book. Now, there do need to be some changes in certain areas, which, for certain departments, but they're going.
Okay.
What Mr. Cruz
okay.
indicated is that they would make the amendments prior to the public hearing on the 30th by resolution.
Or what about the revenues for the, from the,
Rescue plan.
Rescue Act, the Rescue Plan, sorry. The American Rescue Act Plan. Where's the revenue? Where are those revenues?
I believe they were inserted into last year's budget through Chapter 159 insertion, but Mr. Cruz could speak more clearly to that.
Mr. Conlon, you are actually correct. The amount was introduced prior to the end of the 2021 fiscal year budget. It was introduced in the 2021 budget.
Okay, but I don't see any allocations from the administration introducing those allocations to the council.
Okay, so
Can I speak?
So wait a minute, before you speak, Mr. Conlon,
Yes,
you
ma'am.
you had a vote on the floor. Everyone voted. You need to tie that part of the business up, and then allow Councilwoman Vaughn to finish her questioning.
Yes, ma'am. So the vote on the floor is 6-1. It is so ordered. The introduction of the budget is adopted. The public hearing is set for September 30th, 2021 at 5:30 or soon thereafter, as it may be here.
All righty. So now, Councilwoman Vaughn, continue.
Okay, well, I just want to see those allocations across the actual allocation of the funding that we received from the federal government, and how the mayor proposing to allocate across all departments in the city or services, right? So I want to see that in this budget.
Yeah. Can Director Zelensky speak?
Yes, go right ahead, Mr. Zelensky.
According to the new state rules for the rescue money, we're going to have to appropriate each of those. We're going to have to appropriate money for each project that we approve going forward. They're not requiring a full plan upon the introduction of the budget. We're going to have to do it. We're going to have to do a budget amendment for Chapter 159 for each of the projects that we do. So there's the only thing in this budget on page 10A as revenue, there's $7 million in for the loss of revenue from last year. 10A.
So that's not making sense to me, Mr. Zelensky, that we have the 30 million and it's only going to be introduced in pieces. That makes no sense to me.
That's the state rules. That's how they want it done. They want to treat it as unallocated funds. The $32 million is sitting on the balance sheet, and we're going to have to, every time we approve some money to be spent there, it becomes a budget amendment. So as we go through the year, every time we use rescue money, we're going to have to technically amend the budget as in Chapter 159.
So let me ask Mr. Cruz a question. Mr. Cruz.
Yes, Madam President.
So we voted to bring in a monitor for that money. So is the monitor, have we hired a monitor for this money?
Madam President, we have not hired a consulting firm for the money.
you see, that's a problem for me, because the monitor or the consulting firm should be able to tell us whether this, because, making amendments down the line rather than to insert that 30 million in this budget and explain to us the other 30 million for changing the calendar year. This is just not adding up to me. I need some guidance here. This is not adding up.
Yes, Madam President, we have the Givens law firm who has been...
No, Mr. Cruz. We asked in a resolution that the city hire a consultant just for this. We already had the Givens firm on here dealing with other cases. We asked the administration in the resolution, Mr. Collin, can you put the resolution up?
Yes, ma'am. Just give me 1 minute. There you go, ma'am. It's on the screen.
And so to say that the way that we're going to deal with this 36 million is to come back with amendments throughout the year, throughout the fiscal year, rather than to have that money inserted into this budget, it's just not adding up to me. And who explains how the 30 million that we're supposed to have based on the calendar year change, where does that fit in this budget at?
Madam President, so the ARP money was already inserted into the budget in 2021. What Mr. Ron Solinsky was referring to is for expenditures. So if we're going to be spending $5 million, and I'm just using examples, in parks, whatever it is that we want to do, every time we are going to spend that funding, we then come to council with a resolution saying we are asking council for permission and declaring a chapter 159, as Mr. Solinsky said, to spend this money. And so it's not that we are inserting the money in the budget per se, it is actually spending the money that was already inserted in the 2021 budget. As he said, we have the money in the books in the city, but we are only asking for individual, which is what the state wants.
Okay, so now the interim rules stated that the mayor had to have the entire plan in front of the council and the public, and then we would vote on the plan. And then after we voted on the plan, because the plan would show us a breakdown of how those that money was to be allocated. And so the plan that the mayor put forth was not an actual plan. He said it was a preliminary plan, and he went to the public once to get the public's input. Once the public gave him his input, he never came back to the council with the full plan of how the money was going to be allocated. So once we were going to look at the allocations of the money, and we were going to know exactly how those resolutions or how you were going to move forward to get the council's vote to spend the money. But the plan needed to come with the breakdown of how all of that money was going to be allocated.
Council President?
Yes, go right ahead.
I'm reading, I just brought up Chapter 159, Procedures for the Budget. And I don't know if I'm not clear whether or not the money from the American Rescue Plan qualifies as grant money. This Chapter 155 refers to grants. and unanticipated revenue that the city received, that special item of revenue. So I need some legal clarity on this, because the federal government was clear, the Department of Treasury was clear that that revenue that we received into this municipality, it was there for emergency remediation for our city and for the people that live here for COVID. So again, I would want some clarity from the Department of Treasury whether or not NJSA 40A Chapter 4 through 87, Chapter 159 procedures apply to that aid. I don't think it does. But the legal experts here, Mr. Kaloji and/or Mr. Bridges, can expound on this. But I don't think it doesn't. I don't think it does.
Ron Zelensky, can I speak?
Because that's emergency aid. People need the Rescue Act plan. With the word rescue in there, is emergency aid that needs to get to the people very quickly. And I do not think that this statute that's been on the books forever, it looks like, even before the Rescue Act plan even came into existence, it applies to grants, I don't think it applies to this emergency funding that we received to provide relief from COVID.
She asked for an attorney, Mr. Kaloji or Mr. Bridges, to speak to this.
Mr. Kaloji can state that I don't know the precise question, but I certainly do not purport to be a budget expert off the top of my head. That's why we have people who are expert in this area, and I would ask that if we have a very specific question, that we get it from them. This is less of a legal issue than it is a budgetary issue.
Well, let's go out to the federal government then, because I want to make sure we got this right. I don't believe that state statute applies to that emergency funding that is intended for provide emergency relief to the people of the city. So I don't think it was. So that's what I'm saying. So we need to find out who at the Department of Treasury can provide us some guidance. Perhaps, Mr. Bridges, you can go out to them and ask that question.
Hi. Madam President, Adam Cruz, if I may.
Yes, go right ahead, Mr. Cruz.
Yes, Madam President, not to contradict Councilwoman Vaughn, but it is actually something that we got from the state. It's not something that Trenton has chosen to do on its own. Every municipality that received ARP funding is being advised by the Department of Community Affairs that the route to take to be able to spend this money is by making that specific resolution and doing a Chapter 159. So yes, it's not just Trenton, it's every municipality in the state. That is all.
Madam President.
Did you get that letter? Did you get that letter? Did you share it with the council? Can you share that with the council, that guidance?
Madam President, if I may, I can give a specific guidance.
Go right
This
ahead.
is Colin Cherry. Colin Cherry, Assistant Business Administrator. Councilwoman, I will make sure to send this to Mr. Conlon, but it is Local Finance Notice 2021-11 that was issued on June 4th of 2021. And it describes specifically the American Rescue Plan, all of the guidance seen by the state, and at the end it describes the procedure that Mr. Zelensky talked about, how we are instructed from the state to budget and report on our American Rescue Plan funds, and they require the Chapter 159 resolutions on page 10 of that local finance notice.
Council President, just a note that Ms. Colwell-Wilson wanted to be heard, ma'am.
Oh, yes, I didn't see her hand. It's not showing up on my screen. Councilwoman Vaughn, are you finished?
Yeah, I'm just finding it concerning, and it also states that that Chapter 159 also states that the Division of Local Government Services may approve the insertion. So why would we need DCA in the state to approve that monies? It's not state aid that's coming to the municipality. I don't understand that. And this is what the statute, Chapter 159 states.
If I may, Madam President, or do you wish to go to?
This is not part of transitional aid. It's not part of any of the state funding. I don't believe that's what the Department of Treasury intended. So I don't know. So again, I just would like someone to go out to the federal government and get further guidance. That's all. And I yield my time, Council President.
Councilwoman Caldwell-Wilson.
Oh, yeah.
You had a question, ma'am, for the floor. She was given the floor to you.
Councilwoman.
Mr. Conlon, could you pull up the first page of his budget?
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to bring attention to this, and I've asked to have it changed. My name is misspelled on that. Caldwell is misspelled.
Yeah, ma'am, we did ask.
Mr. Zielinski, have your department change that?
Yes, Madam Vice President, the matter has been raised to Mr. Zielinski, and the change will be reflected on the next document.
Okay, thank
Yes.
you.
And thank you.
Alrighty, so Mr. Conlon, are we about to see a presentation on this from Mr. Cherry?
It really should go before the public hearing on the 30th, but at your discretion. The only thing is, it does fall within the parameters of this meeting, but we have already satisfied the emergent requirement for the meeting, which is the actual introduction and adoption of the introduction for the budget.
All right, I would like for the public to see the presentation too, so yes.
I have an emergency in my family. Thank you all. Mm-hmm.
Oh, 1 second, that just went away. Okay, now we can get it. Mr. Cherry, it is your floor if Council President wants to yield it. Ma'am?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, members of the public. We are excited to present this budget for you this evening. We do want to preface this with the fact that this is an unusual budget and an unusual presentation, as this is a transition year budget. So we are discussing only a 6-month budget, which will elapse at the end of December. So at that point, we will enter our first calendar year budget with calendar year 2022, which will be the first full 12-month budget. This is just a transition with 6 months and is based primarily on last year's budget and covering short-term expenses that we need to get through the end of this year. Next slide, please. This is just a short timeline. We did not know when council wanted to vote on the budget, so we stuck some dates in here, but we can adjust them to September 30th. We voted to introduce here this evening, and as long as we adopt prior to the beginning of October, we will be fine. At this point, we will be submitting this budget, the introduced budget, to the Department of Community Affairs in parallel as we work with members of City Council to make amendments, and hopefully DCA will provide us with the appropriate approval, and then we can move to adopt. Next slide, please. This is just a brief overview. Our proposed TY 2021 budget is $131.6 million, and that includes grants. It's a decrease of $95.9 million as compared to FY 2021, primarily because this is a 6-month budget, but the reason that it represents slightly more than half is in part because of those additional revenues that we were able to capture because of the transition. It also involves, where certain revenues and expenses fall throughout a calendar year, but it represents just a 6-month budget. The municipal tax rate will be identical to the municipal tax rate from the previous 12 months. That, just to stress, that means a 0% municipal tax increase. And
no, following calendar year.
The prior calendar year. And we are intending to keep that commitment through calendar year 2022. As long as we adopt the budget by October 7th, we will be able to get tax bills out on time, as well as complete a tax sale by the end of the transition year, which is necessary to support this budget. This slide here is the same format that we usually use. I think it's a little less useful because it's comparing a 6-month budget to a 1-year budget, but we did still want to provide it. We will be posting this presentation on the website, so I will allow folks to look at it at their leisure, but we did want to make sure that this comparison was included in our presentation. Next slide, please. This is just a pie chart regarding our revenue outlook. It's very similar to usual years, about 40% state aid, nearly 40% from taxes, and the remainder from other sources. We just like to provide this handy visual. Next slide, please. For some highlights of our revenue, again, the revenue total is the same as the total budget, $131.6 million. We have about $5 million of grants in this 6-month budget. Something we did want to call out specifically is the
I'm looking for it. Good. Thank you, sir. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem at all. We did want to point out specifically that we received Comptra and energy receipts tax of $22.5 and $20.9 million respectively. Those are our usual full year numbers, but because of making the transition, we're actually able to get the full year of allocation, even though we're only in a 6-month budget. We can't say exactly what number we'll receive next year. That hasn't been determined yet, but we will receive the full amount once again for calendar year 2022. So this is part of that additional revenue we talked about. As Mr. Zielinski said before, we've anticipated $7 million from the American Rescue Plan into this budget to apply it to the Capital Improvement Fund. The intent of doing that is to reduce our reliance on bonding for capital projects. It would mean that that money could be used without going out to bond, which is something that I know City Council has indicated that they would like to see from us. Next slide, please. This is just a pie chart showing the appropriations. Again, the percentages are about the same as a normal 12-month budget. You can see that nearly 50% of our appropriations are salary and wages, and then smaller amounts for other things. One thing that you will see that is a little different on this particular budget is that a larger percentage is being spent on insurance. The reason for that is we have exhausted or nearly exhausted most of our insurance reserves over the past 3 or so years. And we are using some of the additional revenue that we're receiving this year to replenish those reserves, which is very important in case we get hit with some sort of lawsuit or even an unusual number of small claims. The city is self-insured, so it is important to remember that when it comes to paying out these claims, the city is its own backstop. Next slide, please. This is just a brief summary of our appropriations. at least the highlights thereof. As I said, most of the appropriations are what you would expect from the 12-month budget, but the overall department costs are 50.2% of the budget. And then we have debt service for a little over 14%. Insurance, again, is higher this time than usual at 14.5%. The capital improvement fund, which I mentioned before, represents a little over 5%. And we did want to note again that there is no pension payment in this transition year budget. Pension payments are made solely in April of the year, so we don't actually have to make one during the 6-month budget. So that saves us a little, about $15 million in this particular budget. And then we have almost 16%, including for reserve for uncollected taxes, grants, the library budget, which is about $2 million, utility and other expenses. And then I would, that's our last slide. So myself, Mr. Cruz, and Mr. Zielinski are here to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Council President, did you want to entertain questions? Are there any questions?
Yes. Excuse me, yes. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go right ahead,
President McBride.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Right. So the question I have is using the American Recovery Funds for insurance or to replenish our reserves. It's my understanding that the spirit of the American Recovery Funds is to support and address, community concerns as it relates to the negative impact that COVID-19 has had on our community, right? And so I would like to inquire about, why we are not using all of these funds to positively impact a community that has been ravaged by COVID-19. I'm a little concerned that we're using these funds for, fiscal concerns rather than citizen concerns. And so I'd like to kind of hear an explanation of how much are we putting in and why aren't we using that money to directly confront the challenges as it relates to COVID. It seems that, money used, like we should have been putting money in reserve for years, but that seems to be, a decision that this administration made. Instead, I'd like to hear why we're not using these funds to address the human toll and, the societal toll of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Madam President?
Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you, Councilman. Maybe I was unclear. I apologize. The additional funds that we are using to replenish our reserves are not the rescue plan funds. The $7 million in rescue plan funds that we are taking in, we are putting toward the capital improvement funds. We haven't nailed down exactly how each will be spent. They can be spent on future capital projects, but we do anticipate spending the bulk of that money on things like road and infrastructure repairs that we believe are helpful in addressing some of the issues that our citizens may face. But I will say that in particular, we are bringing that money into the budget under the lost revenue provision of the American Rescue Plan specifically, because it represents a portion. We actually represented about $23 million in lost revenue, but we're only anticipating $7 million, and we're putting 100% of that toward the capital improvements.
And again, we're not using any American Recovery Funds for that transfer.
We're using the American Recovery for the Capital Improvement Fund as lost revenue, but not for any of those insurance reserves or any replenishment thereof.
Okay, just making sure.
No problem.
So the Mr. Cherry. So my question is, the federal government had received, I believe, $200 million for the roads. And, you know, I sent a letter out to administration asking them to show the council how they aggressively went to the state to get our share of that money for our roads. And although you're saying that the $7 million that you're taking from the American Rescue Plan is for capital improvement, but we still never talked about the monies that the state received under the American Rescue Plan, nor have you ever spoke to the fact of how much the county received in our portion of that. So to me, the $7 million that you included for the capital improvement, although we do need the improvement, but we were entitled to part of the money that the governor got out of that $2 million for our roads. And we were also entitled to part of the $2 billion that he got for the transportation. And the other day I noticed an article about the arts coming into Trenton, into our transit center, but no one ever talks about the breakdown of those funds that the state received and that the portion that we were supposed to get.
Madam President, if I may, Adam Cruz.
Go right ahead, Mr. Cruz.
Hi, Madam President. We have been in communication with the state. As you are aware, we do meet with DCA every Monday, and every Monday we ask whether there has been any changes into that matter. Is there anything coming to the municipalities from that funding that they received? And as of this time, we are being advised every week that there has been no change in the governor's, from the treasurer for funding coming to municipalities from the money that they're receiving. However, we are waiting because Congress has actually have been discussing infrastructure funding that will be sent to once the bill passes to state. So we are hopeful that the city of Trenton will receive money, and then we can concentrate the money that comes for infrastructure into road repairs and we will not have the need to use this funding. However, the funding that we have here is an opportunity for us to have something in the budget should the federal government doesn't make a determination prior to the adoption of the budget, and we can proceed with some projects for the beginning of the year next year and or the end of this year and the beginning of next year.
If there's no more questions, Mr. Collins, we may move on.
The moving on would be the adjournment. Ma'am, is that a motion to adjourn?
Yes, if there's no more questions.
A motion to adjourn by Council President Ms. Colwell-Wilson vocalized it, so we'll just go Ms. Colwell-Wilson. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Michelle. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered. We are adjourned at 6:20 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, the next city council meeting will be on September 14th. It'll be the council conference session, and the regular meeting will be on September 16th. I will send out the new meeting link. This is only a one-time link, and we will have a new meeting link for those meetings, which will go out and be posted and blast out. We thank you for joining us tonight. The meeting is over.
I have a question. We're not having the joint meeting this evening?
No, we are not, sir. We can only have an emergency meeting due to a failure of the old Microsoft Teams link. So there was an IT And we cannot proceed with any other business. This was only for an emergency to prevent imminent harm to the city by not adopting the budget. So the rest of the meeting, those items will be heard on the 14th and the 16th.
All right, thank you.
You're very welcome. That is the end of the meeting, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great evening, and if you're not home already, get home safely.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, council members.